So I was looking for a different type of video that I could do, because, let's be honest, straight gameplay commentaries are some of the most boring and dull content I've ever produced. So instead, let's go through some tech tree lines one by one and describe the type of player, and maybe the type of ship, that you'll probably meet if you manage to bump into these ships in your random battle games. So without further ado, let's get into it. Oh, and I did mention we're going to be covering the Royal Navy Light Cruiser line. So the first ship in the line is no other than the Black Swan, and I suppose it's an adequate name because just like the chances of a Black Swan event happening, an event like half of that Canary Island falling into the ocean and causing a tsunami that would knock out the eastern seaboard of the US, parts of Europe and North Africa, or a meteor strike occurring in the next 30 minutes, in which case it doesn't really matter, and I think I would advise not to be watching a video about World of Warships if that was happening. Anyways, another example could be submarines being released in a balanced and fun way into the game, although maybe the first two events have a little bit of a higher probability of happening than that. These events will only happen generally so rarely that nobody really thinks about them, kind of like the Black Swan itself sitting all the way at tier 1. The chance of you playing more than one game to get the XP to move to the next tier is extremely low. Now, some people will say that the Black Swan is overpowered for the tier, and well, at tier 1 the ability to breathe, control a keyboard and control a mouse would be overpowered. I mean, you're literally playing against people who are literally playing their first battles. So let's move on with as much speed as it takes to go from tier 1 to tier 2, shall we? So we get to number 2 in the list, or tier 2 rather, and with that it brings us to the Weymouth. So even at this point you may be wondering, why the hell is this guy talking about tier 1 and tier 2? And well, you'd be right, because I can't even barely justify talking about this ship, to be honest. It has an abysmal reload, which means you'd probably be better off spending your time building a time machine, travelling back to 1822, picking up a shell yourself and teleporting back into the game and using that. But again, it's tier 2, so yeah. This ship isn't really made to be evaluated like this. This ship is more so designed to be used as a test for whether or not your W key can be pressed 4 times in a row. If it can, then congratulations, you'll get some XP and probably be at tier 3 within 2 to 3 games. Although on the other hand, if your keyboard doesn't pass the test, then you're going to be sitting in spawn for about as long as it takes for someone to go from tier 1 to tier 3, which is about 20 minutes. Upwards we go to the dizzy heights of tier 3. And now we reach tier 3, and at tier 3 sits the Caldon, a strange ship and almost as forgettable as the Belfast, because you don't see it often in random battles. But then tier 7 rank drops in the World of Warships and Belfast drop from the sky like raindrops, ready to drive their shells up your ass. So in that one unique way, the Caldon is very much like the Belfast, although in every other way it's nothing like the Belfast. Now the Caldon does have some unique skills of its own that only certain ships in World of Warships have, although I say skills. Perhaps that might be the wrong word. The ability to be citadeled by the Clemson HE. Now that is a special skill. Now I don't talk about glass cannons often, but if you look the term glass cannon in the Oxford English Dictionary and crossed out the word cannon, there would no doubt be a picture of the Caldon sitting right there staring back at you. Although you could also just look up the word glass. I don't know why it did. Okay, the glass can. Anyways, and this is going to be running throughout the video as well. Most of these ships are made of paper or glass or some really flimsy materials, and this is only the start, so buckle in, you're in for a long ride all the way up to tier 10. So you could say that the Caldon is pretty much more of a destroyer than a real life cruiser, and I guess that could be considered a fairly fair opinion, and I might just consider moving on to tier 4 because I've already spent way too much time considering way too many considerations about this ship. Let's get moving up. And at tier 4 there's the Danny. Danny? No. Not those Dannies, this is the Danny, the British tier 4 light cruiser Danny. This ship had loads of things: torpedoes, decent guns, decent reload, and non-existent armour, so normal for a Royal Navy cruiser. Light cruisers, that is. Let's not get into discussion about the heavies, shall we? And although I do say that the Danny has decent torpedoes, they are 6 kilometers in range, which means you'll probably be more likely to use your actual ship as a torpedo and sink the enemy versus actually using your own torpedoes throughout the course of a battle. Anyways, I feel like I'm talking about the Danny perhaps a little bit too much like an actual ship you're going to main, and not like a ship you're going to play a couple of times and then swiftly forget about it, only to be reminded of it when you want to get the Ohio and you have to reset the line in order to get the research points and have to grind through it again. So instead, let me just say this, it's fairly average. Moving along to higher tiers and better, much better ships. So I said better, much better ships, but I mean after this one. I might have jumped the gun just a little bit. Finally, we get to a ship I'm sure most of you will recognise, well at least I do, and that is none other than the Emerald, the tier 5 version of a Royal Navy light cruiser. So where to start with the Emerald? Well, it does have a pretty unique name, the valuable gemstone, emeralds, but that's about as far as the comparison goes, because while gemstones like the emerald are incredibly valuable in real life, the emerald in World of Warships is about as valuable as a tin can of soup. Seriously, you know the way that I sometimes talk in a bit of an exaggerated way to, add some spice to what I'm saying? Well, not this time, because this truly is one of the worst ships in the game, tier for tier. At least when I grinded through it for the first time. Now, like most turrets and emeralds, when you polish them, sometimes you get something decent or shiny out of them. And in Emerald's case, World of Warships, you get torpedoes. And the smoke. Use them. Although, when you do, your guns aren't probably going to hit all that much. Just like that unpolished turret I mentioned earlier. The best case of action while playing the Emerald, usually before you smash your keyboard after trying to 1v1 a bow in Mk XXV and losing, is to use all that free XP you saved up while grinding as far into the line and use it to zoom past the Emerald as fast as you can. Seriously, this is one of the worst ships in the game. But enough about the Emerald, let's see what terror awaits us at tier 6. I mean, you can only get better from here, right? So after the terror that is the Emerald, we make it to tier 6, and at tier 6 we are greeted by the Leander, a definite upgrade on the Emerald. Although to be fair, a 2-month-old child sailing the Leander would probably still be better than a normal person playing the Emerald. Anyways, enough about that. The Leander is probably one of the better ships in the Royal Navy line, as it is probably where the line actually starts to become real, for lack of a better word. So if the Emerald has airsoft guns for turrets and a monkey aiming them, then the Leander has actual naval guns and a competent naval officer aiming them. This is honestly a fairly nice ship to play and really sets a tone for how to play Royal Navy cruisers in random battles, i.e. using your smoke effectively and farming damage while being undetectable. Although there is one phenomenon that I've noticed more so in the Leander than any other ship. I like to call it the super British potato, and much like a potato, if you put it in fresh water, then it floats. If you put it in salt water, then it sinks. And well, when you put a potato in a British-like cruiser in the middle of the sea, it tends to sink quicker than usual, especially when it gets cut to pieces by lead. Now, this could be a characteristic of all British cruisers, but there's something about the Leander that I always seem to see it roaming around the map like Mr. Bean and dying relatively quickly. So the Leander is the first step on the rise to tier 10, and a decent one. Let's keep going and see what awaits us at tier 7, damn it. And well, what awaits us at tier 7 is yet another step up in terms of quality, and it's none other than the Fiji. Fiji, in my humblest of opinions, is probably one of the best non-premium cruisers in the game, pound for pound. As long as you don't end up getting one shot sitting in your smoke-full broadside to that enemy Bayern 12 kilometers away. Because, trust me, that definitely does happen to all the Royal Navy light cruisers. And just in that vein, the Fiji is not too dissimilar to the YOLO and Kremlin you see passing you by while you sit in smoke. Either they live long enough to win you the game and do 200k damage, or they get burned to the ground before they even get 2 salvos off. The Fiji is not too dissimilar. You either get into a good position, farm damage, and end up doing over 100k easily, or you get blopped within the first few minutes of the game and limp your way back to port with 5k damage, and a bruised ego to show for it. That's not to say that the Fiji is an all or nothing ship. This ship has great potential, even more so when ranked. That's why you often see it next to premium ships like the Atlanta and the Belfast when rank does eventually reach tier 7. The Fiji is a highlight of the Royal Navy cruiser line, and if you can't make it work, then the rest of the line is going to be something akin to a horror story on the level of the 5 Men of the Apocalypse, Halloween and Jaws all mixed into one. Although with Jaws, the only thing going to be eating your ship is the enemy Russian BB. If you truly can't make the ship work, I would probably suggest more time learning the line, or perhaps moving on to a line more enjoyable or beginner friendly. At tier 8 there's the Edinburgh. The Edinburgh was named after a city in Scotland called Edinburgh, and if you're this far into the video, congratulations, because at this point I'm running out of things to say, and I'm really close to starting to list random pointless facts about the city of Edinburgh, like the fact that the world's only knighted penguin lives at Edinburgh Zoo. Yep, I bet you didn't think you'd learn that in a video about World of Warships. Anyways, before I get too derailed, just much like Edinburgh Castle, the Edinburgh in World of Warships can basically be played like a castle. You push out with your exceptionally good concealment, then smoke up with your long-lasting smokes, and basically control an entire area of the map by yourself. If the enemy team does send torpedoes your way, well then you always have your Hydra to back you up, and make sure that no harm comes to that very, very, very available citadel of yours. The Edinburgh is very much a carry-capable ship, just like the Fiji and just like the Minotaur and the Neptune, and as a result, once you get used to the playstyle, by playstyle I mean getting one shot every other game, or getting death struck by torpedoes because you forgot to hydro when you smoked up after pushing into the middle cap 4 minutes into the game, then you'll have a lot of fun carrying games in the Edinburgh. 2 ships left to go. So we get to the penultimate ship in the Royal Navy line, and it's none other than the Neptune. This ship is big. Very, very, very big. Much bigger than the Edinburgh, and much bigger than the Minotaur. If the Minotaur is a fishing trawler, then the Neptune is an oil tanker. Now this doesn't mean that the Neptune is a bad ship, far from it. she still possesses many of the characteristics that make ships like the Edinburgh so good. Good concealment, good guns, good smokes. So remember when I said that the Neptune was like an oil tanker? Well, just like an oil tanker, the Neptune takes about 3 days to go from moving like a normal ship to actually stop. What this actually means is that you'll need to start slowing down immediately, or even before you pop your smoke, to actually have a chance to be within it when you eventually do come to a full stop. Now I should also probably give you the obligatory warning that this is made of citadels. The fact that it's the size of Russia doesn't help this, so be careful. Otherwise you're going to end up at the same place where the Emerald spends the majority of its time, the bottom of the ocean. Let's get on to the final ship. I think you know what it is. At long last, and after much repetition, pain, suffering, we reached the top of the line, and we finally reached the Minotaur. The Minotaur is probably the amalgamation of all of the Royal Navy line cruisers rolled into one. For one thing, it is fairly small, especially when you compare it to the Neptune. The turrets also just feel like a Dakar boat, which is a fairly unique feeling that I felt wasn't really there with the preceding ships. Now, if you're looking for a massive grandiose explosion of overpoweredness from the Minotaur, well then you're going to need to look elsewhere, because while it still is a pretty decent ship, it does get outclassed by the likes of the Smolensks, the Petros and all the new ships in the game. But it still does have its place and shouldn't be looked down upon. It's still loads of fun to play. You just got to be more careful, because one bad shell and you go bye bye very quickly. The Minotaur's main strength is its concealment. Well, maybe was its concealment, considering just how abundant radar is becoming in the game, making smoking up look more like native Indians sending out smoke signals saying, look at me, I'm right here, radar me. To tie into this, the range of 15.8 kilometers isn't fantastic, which means you have about 6 kilometers of wiggle room to play with. Although if you get the range mod, then this will be extended. Well, and considering your concealment gets down to about 9 kilometers at maximum, the Minotaur is a good ship and has potential. It just takes time, patience and skill. If you don't put in the time to learn the ship, it is going to blow up in your face. But it's only pixels, so who cares? Although your teammates might care, and well, we all know how that goes. So that pretty much sums it up for another video. I like doing this one mod, but I might switch it up. Let me know in the comments below if there's a particular line you think I should cover, or if there's something in particular you think I missed. But until next time, I'll see you all in the next one.